YouTube community, Beach Boys fans, random people on the internet. My name is Giggens, and we are here today to talk about the Beach Boys' 1980 album, Keepin' the Summer Alive, produced by Beach Boy Bruce Johnston. Now, by 1980, the collective crap was hitting the fan for these guys. Internal squabbles, lack of interest from the label, lack of interest from the group themselves, all these negative things are kind of dictating their next move, and it just wasn't the happy-go-lucky band that they once were. It was older guys who were lost in themselves and addictions and legal cases and a bunch of garbage, and they had to come together and make an album together. And it's this point in their career, it's really hard for them. Just really hard. There was a disastrous Good Morning America interview in which Dennis is basically falling off the couch. Brian can look like he can care less about being there. Mike and Al are pissed off at Dennis for falling off the couch. Carl's trying to save face by keeping things copacetic. Jerry Schilling, their manager at the time, comes in and he tries to keep things level and keep the peace up. But the questions that they're being asked by Joe London are just these questions about the group falling apart, and they're having a really awkward time trying to say, yeah, things are great, because they weren't. Times had changed. And the guys knew that the people who came to their shows just wanted to hear Help Me Rhonda and Wouldn't It Be Nice and Surfing USA over and over again. They didn't care about new albums. It's just how it was. And they knew that, and a few of the guys in the band, the forward-thinking ones, like Dennis and Carl, were really put off by that. Carl even said at one point that they could put on a, quote, turkey of a show, and they'd still have people say it was one of the best shows they ever saw. And Carl was like, look, I could have phoned that in, and you still think it's good? Like, that sucks. He felt like they were losing their artistic integrity, and Dennis was a big proponent of that too. He really hated that they relied it so hard on their old songs. He really wanted to have the band focus on new stuff and be a creative, progressive, current band. As they had spent so much time rebuilding themselves in the late 60s and early 70s after Brian was kind of MIA, they worked so hard for that, and then Endless Summer came out, and then that was it. It was just kind of, not downhill, but in terms of their artistic growth, it stunted that. At this point, with the Beach Boys albums, the collective air was let out of the collective balloon. I mean, it really feels like a bunch of kids who had to get together to make that stupid diorama so they can get a passing grade and they can advance to the next year of school. It was just like this, let's just get this over with. Let's get our royalty checks, let's get our advances from the company. Let's just get this over with and not really care about it. And that could be a little harsh of a thing to say, but this is the same band that made Pet Sounds, and this is the same band that made Holland, and the same band that even made Love You more recently. So, it's their albums at this point are a little hard. Not bad, but a little hard. So, at this point, a couple of the guys went to Hawaii. Brian, Carl, and Mike went to Hawaii, and they wrote a few songs. They came back because CBS, their label, was like, hey, we need something now. The Light album didn't sell the way we wanted it to. The reaction was pretty lukewarm. Go back, do it again. And so they did. They, went to Hawaii, wrote a couple songs, came back, and started working on this album. And Carl at one point mentioned how Brian was really hot for 3 days. He was just on it. He was back in his producer role. He was hitting all the notes. He was killing it. And then he just kind of stopped. And it was back to Bruce Johnston taking over the reins again to, finish the album and put his touch on it. And this album, I think, is a way better produced album than the previous one, the Light album, which he also produced. The album as a whole, it's a decent album. It really is. But Dennis is absent from 99% of this thing, which is sad because this was the last album that came out during his lifetime. He does sing and play in the last song, Endless Harmony, which is a song that Bruce had written in 1972 and originally called 10 Years of Harmony, a title they would use on their next Greatest Hits album that came out right after this. So, let's just get into it. Kicking off the album is a fantastic, fantastic song, Keepin' the Summer Alive. It was so good, they named the album after it. Carl co-wrote it with a guy called Randy Bachman from Bachman Turner Overdrive, or The Guess Who, whatever you prefer. It's just a great song. Carl's got these ripping lead vocals, and their instrumentation is really loose, but rockin' and tight at the same time. It sounds like a band who cares. You know, after L.A., the Light album being kind of like a really pedestrian, kind of chill, kind of quiet album, this song comes in and basically kicks your ass. You know, it's an ode to the fundamental elements that construct lasting summer memories. It's just, it's ice cream, it's girls, it's the Beach Boys. Like, it sounds like a modern, at the time, Beach Boys song, which is a great thing to have. The background vocals are great all the way through. The guitar solo was super simple but really effective. Wonderful opener. Great start to the album. Oh Darling is the next song. And it's a very sweet ballad. It's got this synthy harpsichord thing running underneath it. And great vocals from the guys all the way through. It's good to hear Brian in the background a little bit. The chorus is super infectious. And the bridge is one of Mike's best vocals in years at this point. Because when Mike just sings and doesn't like put on a show, he can really, really sing, and it's really good. The bridge of this song reminds me of Hushabye, where he hits these higher notes, like not a falsetto, but just a really sweet moment. And it's great to see him or hear him do that, because it shows that he's got more sides and more range to his voice. And it makes him more human or something. I don't know, it just makes him more likable, or his voice more likable. Because at this point, last couple albums with his voice, it's a little on the irritating side. So to hear him do something like that is fantastic. Yeah, really not a bad song. Some of Your Love. This song musically and harmonically dates back a couple years before to a song called Might Come Back to L.A. That they're kind of messing around with. And it's got some really like bright, shimmering Beach Boys harmonies in the background. And it's one of those songs that's kind of amazing to hear that they can still pull that off with just them. It's definitely got that Beach Boys magic, for sure. You know, Mike's got a really strong vocal all throughout, and the whole track, for me, feels like another Be True to Your School. It's kind of got that same Be True to Your School vibe, especially in the background vocals leading into the verses. Living with a Heartache, it's a really nice piece of lightweight pop music. I really enjoy the acoustic guitars on it. And that's another Carl and Randy co-write, and it sounds like it would have been a really good Bachman Turner Overdrive song if there were some electric guitars on it. You know, it sticks in your head. It's really not that bad. School Days. Man, I am really split on this one. I can go both ways on this one. It's really hit or miss. Definitely one of those I have to be in the mood for it songs. Sometimes I'm really into it. Sometimes I can't stand it at all. Especially with the thing in the background. Sometimes I'm digging it. Sometimes I'm like, oh my god, that's so annoying. So, you know, it's kind of, it sticks out in a, not in like a head-scratching way, but it's not terrible. Maybe it would have made a better B-side or on a different album. It just doesn't really fit. It's hard to explain. I mean, it's not terrible, but not my best. Not my favorite song on the album. Side 2 opens with Going On, and holy crap, this is easily one of the best songs I think they ever wrote, period. But especially from this era. I mean, it's the only song on this album I absolutely truly love. I think it's one of the best songs they ever did. And it's so heartbreaking that it wasn't a gigantic smash. It's got all the elements of a classic Beach Boys song. Really soulful vocals from Carl. Mike's doing his Mike thing. Even Brian chimes in here and there. But like the way the vocals and the harmonies, you know, kind of create this churning tension. Or like, you know, up and up and up and up and up, or down, 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 down. Man, what a great song. It's an absolute Beach Boys classic in every way. I can't get enough of that song. Just, I love the lyrics, I love the story, I love the emotion. The fade out with the background vocals, perfect. Sunshine, this track for me is kind of filler. It's got a lot of steel drums, and it just doesn't really go anywhere for me. They had a track that was unfinished at the time called Going to the Beach. I think if they spent some more time on that song, it would have fit in perfectly right there. Yeah. When Girls Get Together dates back to 1969, so it's kind of an older song. And for me personally, I think it's one of the worst Beach Boys songs of all time. This song does absolutely nothing for me. It never has. I've given it years of my time trying to figure out if I like it or how I felt about it. It's never grown on me. It makes my brain hurt. This nauseating array of mandolins create this cheesy restaurant vibe. I think the lyrics are trite. It rambles on forever. It just doesn't end. I skip it all the time. I mean, if you guys like it, that is awesome. I'm glad it's got a home somewhere. But for me, I think it's crap. Just my opinion. Just my opinion. Santa Ana Wins. It's kind of a mess song for me too. They did an earlier version of the song a couple albums before. They kind of demoed it, and Bruce wasn't really feeling that song at the time, but he kind of rearranged it a little bit, added acoustic guitars, and then sang with Al, and there you go. It was album worthy at the time. I think it's one of the weaker cuts in the album, but it's not terrible. And the last song, Endless Harmony, as I said before, Bruce wrote the song in 1972 as 10 Years of Harmony, and it's weird because it almost seems like it was meant to be the last song on the last album that Dennis ever saw in his lifetime. It's written by Bruce, as an insider or outsider. He always said he felt like a little bit of an outsider, even though he was on the inside. But it's about watching the group grow up, and it's about things in the 60s, just hanging out at the hotels, or making gold records, or meeting girls, or just exploding as a band and seeing what they can do, and how they're just interwoven into the DNA of America at this point. And Bruce does his very melodramatic kind of schmaltzy keyboardy thing, and I think he's got a wonderful vocal on this track. It's really nice to hear his voice on this song. And Carl comes in at the end with absolute full force and this immense, powerful, compelling background vocals with really bombastic instrumentation, and all these vocals are blending into each other, and at the end it's almost like they're saying goodbye to happiness or goodbye to the good old days, or for a brief second it sounds like the Beach Boys. I'll even say that for a band that was once a creative force to be reckoned with, and then they had to reinvent themselves and became this, part of a grassroots culture of live shows and playing with the Grateful Dead and all kinds of other bands, and then, proving themselves that they can do it without their leader intact. And then kind of realizing that maybe their fans just want to hear the oldies, and then kind of just giving in to that feeling and still putting out new albums, but not really sure why or if they cared. That spark was kind of gone. After Holland, so many of their albums just went in terms of genuine authenticity and strength. I mean, there's definitely good songs, and the Beach Boys' Love You album is absolutely fantastic. But their other albums after that were always just kind of albums that just kind of floated in and out. They weren't really doing anything to break new ground. This is a band at this point, like I said, that was riddled by addiction, infighting, lawsuits, members leaving. At this point, Carl was about to leave the band and embark on his first solo album. Dennis was in and out all the time. And you just hear all this sadness punched into this last couple seconds of the album, and it's the most Beach Boys sounding thing since Pet Sounds. It just sounds like the Beach Boys in that one little moment, and then it just disappears and it's over. Very weird ending to an album that is very kind of not all over the place, but it doesn't really have a central theme. It kind of bounces around all over the place. It's got some rockers, some ballads, some tender moments, and then some really amazing moments like that one with Endless Harmony. Overall, Keepin The Summer Alive really isn't a bad album. It's not their best, obviously, and I think even they knew that at the time, but it's also far from their worst. The songs are mostly solid. The instrumentation is upbeat and energetic, and the vocals are trying to be fresh, but with elements of the classic Beach Boys mixture. It's a welcome surprise after the Light album, but even back then, critics were really harsh against this thing. As good as it is, it sounds like a band phoning it in for a contract. Just going through the motions, here's your album. After this came out, like I said, Carl left the group to embark on his solo career and try something different. Dennis was in and out of the band, and Brian was getting more and more lost in his addictions. And by the end of the year, the band was basically Mike, Alan, Bruce, and all their touring guys. I also do want to add one more thing. I think it's fitting and sad that the last song Dennis ever sang on a released album was called Endless Harmony. His beloved boat that he had was called the Harmony. And when he drowned, looking for things he had thrown into the water previously, he was found under the spot where he usually parked his boat, Harmony. Obviously, it's just a coincidence, but it's one that's kind of heartbreaking because Dennis was the real Beach Boy. He was the epitome of that California surf and soul and rock, macho, handsome dude image guy on a surfboard. Like, he was the Beach Boys. He was always looking forward and wanting the band to push themselves, not rely on the old hits. He was always trying to broaden his horizons, and even physically, he felt like the land was constricting, and that on sea he can be himself and be as free as he wanted to be. And his boat was named after what he and his buddies did best. They harmonized. They made harmonies, of which there was an endless supply of. There was always going to be a continuation. And it's sad because, he went looking for his past one night and found some of it, and went looking for more and didn't come back. And his last few months were, like I said, just heartbreaking. Reading about his last few months, it's some of the saddest stuff in the Beach Boys story. But the fact that we're still talking about him and the group and the music they made, I think also accounts for the fact that there's an endless harmony. It's just an endless amount of music that we're always going to listen to and always appreciate. So, in a way, it's kind of fitting that the last song he ever saw on an album was Endless Harmony. So it's almost like, his music was supposed to go on even if he wasn't going to be there. Obviously, it's just, I can go on and on and on about this, but I think you kind of get the idea. This album, I think, peaked at number 75 in America. So it's not a terrible chart performance, but obviously not their best. I'd probably give it like a 6 out of 10. Not bad. I definitely recommend checking it out. I think it's better than the Light album for sure. But man, not terrible, not terrible. And I'll show you. I actually have a promo copy of it. I don't have an actual normal copy, but this is the white label Caribou label, and then the original inner sleeve. So it just says, the guys who played on it, and Ricky Fatar actually plays on it, which is pretty cool. So, yeah, fun fact. That's it, guys. My name is Giggens. This has been the Beach Boys, Keeping the Summer Alive. What an album cover, man. Holy crap. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.